The United States covers roughly 3.8 million square miles. Most people who visit know the obvious landmarks, the Grand Canyon, the Statue of Liberty, Yellowstone. What most people do not know is that this country is covered in structures nobody can explain. A 40-ton boulder in Massachusetts that has been debated for 340 years and still hasn't yielded an answer. A perfect stone circle buried under downtown Miami that stopped a skyscraper. A forgotten city in southern Illinois that, at its height, may have been larger than London, and you have probably never heard of it. Make sure you stick around to the end, because that last story is number one on this list, and it is the kind of thing that changes how you think about what happened here before anyone was writing it down. If you enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing. We cover the forgotten, the strange, and the unexplained, and there is no shortage of material. Today we are counting down 17 ancient structures in America that experts cannot explain. And by the time we reach number 1, you will not believe this country has kept that story this quiet. Number 17. The White Sands Footprints. The oldest footsteps in America. White Sands National Park in New Mexico is already one of the stranger places in the country. A vast dune field of white gypsum that looks, on a bright afternoon, more like the surface of the moon than any American landscape. Drive far enough in, past the glowing dunes, and you reach a section of dry ancient lake bed, where something was found in 2009 that nobody was prepared for. Human footprints. Fossilized into sediment from the shore of a lake called Lake Otero that has not existed for thousands of years. When researchers dated them in 2021 using seeds found in the sediment layers, the result came back between 21,000 and 23,000 years old. That would push back the known date of human presence in North America by nearly 10,000 years. The dating has been contested. A minority of archaeologists argue that the aquatic plants used for dating absorbed old carbon from groundwater, skewing the results. But by 2023, 2 additional independent methods, conifer pollen and optically stimulated luminescence of quartz grains, returned the same age range. And in 2025, a 4th study using Paleolake geochronology added further support. Here is the detail that stops people cold. One set of prints appears to show a human following a giant ground sloth. The sloth's own tracks suggest it rose up on its hind legs and turned. There is no evidence in the prints that the hunt succeeded. That moment, frozen in stone, somewhere between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, is still there, under the park. The footprint sites are protected and not directly accessible, but the visitor center covers the discovery, and ranger programs discuss it. The debate is ongoing. The prints are not. Number 16. The East Bay Mystery Walls. The walls nobody claims. In the hills ringing San Francisco Bay, accessible today in parks like Tilden and Mission Peak, there are hundreds of sections of unmortared stone wall. Some individual boulders weigh over a ton. No written record of their construction exists. The walls stretch for over 50 miles and lead, in some places, to stone circles up to 30 feet in diameter. They are too low to be defensive, too discontinuous to be fences. When American settlers arrived in the 1850s, they asked the Ohlone people who built them. The Ohlone said they had no idea. The earliest published mention appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle in 1896. By 1904, a UC Berkeley chemistry professor had declared that a carved stone image he found in the hills, based on its mineral deposits, represented a civilization that could change the accepted history of the Western world. His findings were never replicated. Recent lichen testing suggests large sections date to the 1850s through 1880s, likely cleared during the California ranching era by laborers who left no records. But no definitive answer exists. They are just there, in the hills, unclaimed by anyone. Number 15. The Hemet Maze Stone. The carving nobody can read. In the Lakeview Mountains, near Hemet, California, is a boulder that has been a California historical landmark since 1956. The carving on it is a 46-inch square unicursal maze, a single continuous geometric path, unlike any other petroglyph known in North America. A rancher named Myers found it in 1914 while hauling wood. Archaeologists who examined it could not agree whether it was a maze, a map, a religious symbol, or graffiti. That was over a century ago. They still cannot agree. About 50 similar carvings have been found within 150 miles of each other in Riverside and San Diego counties, what researchers call the Rancho Bernardo style. But the culture that made them has never been identified. The stone itself has been fenced twice by the county. And vandals added a Nazi-era swastika to the corner sometime after the 1930s. That addition is not original. You can hike to it off California Avenue near Highway 74. The stone is behind chain link. The question it poses has not moved. Number 14. The Rockwall Underground Wall, the town named after its own mystery. In 1852, 3 men digging a well in what would become Rockwall County, Texas, pulled up something that was not gravel. The blocks were rectangular. They appeared precisely cut. They appeared, to everyone who looked, like masonry. The formation has since been documented in at least 11 locations across roughly 20 square miles of Rockwall County. In 1901, a Texas geologist classified it as a natural sandstone dike, sedimentary material that fills cracks over millions of years and hardens. In 2013, forensic geologist Scott Wolter examined a section for the History Channel and reached the same conclusion, while noting the result was unique to say the least. An architect who examined it in 1996 said evidence of a prehistoric human structure was mounting. The entire formation has never been fully excavated. All known locations sit on private land. The town named itself after the wall. In 1949, an excavator reportedly pulled up a stone bearing what appeared to be ancient script that was said to match markings on a copper coin drilled from a well in Illinois in 1870. A coin reportedly stored at the Smithsonian with no official published record. You cannot see the actual wall. You can visit the Rockwall County Historical Foundation Museum, where a small section of removed stones has been reassembled outside. Most of the mystery is still underground. Number 13. The Blythe Intaglios, America's Nazca Lines. On November 12, 1931, an Army Air Corps pilot named George Palmer was flying between Hoover Dam and Los Angeles when he looked down and saw something on the desert floor north of Blythe, California. Giant figures scraped into the gravel, 6 of them in total. 3 human shapes, 2 4-legged animals, and a spiral arranged on 2 mesas within 1,000 feet of each other. The largest human figure is 171 feet long. The smallest is 95 feet. They were made by scraping away darker desert stones to reveal lighter soil beneath, then heaping the removed rocks into borders, exactly the technique used for the Nazca lines in Peru. They cannot be properly understood from the ground. They only make sense from the air. Radiocarbon dates for the figures range from 900 BC to 1200 C. No Colorado River Native American tribe has claimed to have made them, though the Mojave and Cation say the human forms represent Mastamho, the creator of life, and they use the site ceremonially. Here is the problem that nobody has resolved. One of the animal figures looks like a horse. Horses were extinct in North America from roughly 10,000 BC until Spanish settlers reintroduced them in the 1500s. If the figure is a horse, it cannot be as old as the radiocarbon dates suggest. If it is not a horse, it is something else. Archaeologists cannot agree on which. The Blythe Intaglios are open to the public, free of charge, 24 hours a day, protected by 2 fence lines off Highway 95. General Patton used the surrounding area for desert training during World War II and caused visible tire damage to some of the figures. They are still there. Number 12. Judaculla Rock, the stone the giant used as a stepping stone. In a quiet pasture in the mountains of Jackson County, North Carolina, next to a creek and a few hundred feet from a small cemetery, There is a soapstone boulder that contains approximately 1,548 carved motifs, more petroglyphs on a single boulder than any other known site east of the Mississippi River. The carvings include stick figures, cup marks, geometric designs, and 2 hand or claw prints with 7 digits each. Most were carved between roughly 200 and 1400 C, based on stylistic cross-dating. A conservation study in 2007 found that nearly half the rock had been buried under sediment since the 1920s. The symbols remain undeciphered. In Cherokee tradition, the rock belongs to Judaculla, Sulkalu, a slant-eyed giant and master of game who leapt from a mountaintop over 10 miles away and 3,200 feet above the valley, caught himself on the boulder and drew a boundary line with his finger. Cherokee language expert Dr. Tom Belt described the rock as a cultural validation of who we are as a people. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians regards it as a sacred living text, not an archaeological artifact. The 7-digit handprint, a giant's calling card, is considered by some archaeologists the most distinctive petroglyph motif in the entire eastern United States. It has been there for over 1,000 years. Nobody has read the rest of what surrounds it. The site is open to the public during daylight hours. A wooden viewing platform circles the boulder. No amenities. Just the rock, the creek, and 1,548 things nobody has yet understood. Number 11. Dighton Rock. The 40-ton Rorschach test. In 1680, a Harvard graduate named John Danforth spotted a large boulder in the Taunton River, in what is now Berkeley, Massachusetts. He made a drawing of the carvings on its face and sent it to the Royal Society of London. That drawing is now in the British Museum. In 1690, Puritan minister Cotton Mather described the carvings as deeply engraved. No man alive knows how or when. The rock is 40 tons of sandstone, 5 feet high, 995 feet wide, and 11 feet long. For most of its documented history, it sat in the Taunton River, submerged for roughly 20 hours a day at high tide, exposed only at low water. It has since inspired more than 1,000 books and articles and generated over 35 competing hypotheses. Wampanoag, Norse, Phoenician, Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, inevitably, aliens. When a U.S. Army officer photographed Danforth's original drawing alongside the rock in 1853, researchers comparing the two noticed a problem. The drawings did not match. Either the carvings had changed, or each man had seen what he expected to see. As the Brown University psychologist Edmund Delabere, who spent much of his career on the rock, eventually concluded, Dighton Rock functions as a Rorschach test. In 1963, during dam construction, the rock was removed from the river and installed in a small purpose-built museum at Dighton Rock State Park in Berkeley. It is still there. Most contemporary archaeologists believe the carvings are Native American, likely Wampanoag. Most contemporary visitors leave without being sure. Number 10. The Newport Tower. The tower that started a conspiracy industry. In Toro Park in Newport, Rhode Island, there is a round stone tower about 28 feet tall, resting on 8 arched columns, roofless, fenced, containing over 450 tons of rock. Carbon dating of its mortar places it in the mid to late 17th century. The first colonial governor of Rhode Island, Benedict Arnold, great-grandfather of the notorious Revolutionary War trader, mentions my stone-built windmill in his 1677 will. The tower sits on what was his land. Here is the thing. In 1837, a Danish archaeologist named Carl Christian Raff published a book arguing the tower was a Norse church built in the 12th century. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow incorporated the theory into his 1841 poem, The Skeleton in Armor. Americans, desperately wanting evidence of deep pre-Columbian roots, embraced it. By the 1800s, the tower was, for a period, more visited than Niagara Falls. When Newport opened a new hotel in 1925 and held a public vote on its name, the city voted Hotel Viking. That hotel still operates under that name, honoring a theory archaeology has largely dismissed, for a structure that almost certainly held a millstone. The winter solstice sunrise shines directly through two of the tower's windows. The tower is visible to the public at all times. A small museum across the street, run by enthusiasts rather than archaeologists, will argue the Viking case to anyone who stops. Number 9. America's Stonehenge. The site that was fixed before it could be studied. On 30 acres of rocky forested hilltop in Salem, New Hampshire, there are stone chambers, walls, standing stones, and astronomical alignments. Radiocarbon analysis of charcoal at the site shows human occupation going back at least 4,000 years. The standing stones align with solstices, equinoxes, and significant stars including Polaris. In 1937, an insurance executive named William Goodwin bought the property. He had become convinced the structures were built by 7th century Irish Chaldee monks. So he did what no trained archaeologist would ever do. He moved things. Stones that did not fit his theory were relocated to positions where they would. By the time serious archaeologists gained access, the site's original evidentiary record had been permanently altered. What had been here 4,000 years ago, and whether anything visible today reflects that, is genuinely unknowable. The site features an oracle chamber with a speaking tube. Words spoken inside the chamber emerge from beneath a large flat stone outside, called the sacrificial table. Archaeologists note that the table closely resembles a colonial lye-leaching stone used to make soap, or possibly a cider press bed. The site was renamed America's Stonehenge in 1982, in part to distance it from its earlier reputation as a roadside oddity. H.P. Lovecraft visited sometime between 1928 and the 1930s. Today it is open to the public for $12, with walking trails, the astronomical alignment stones, the oracle chamber, and, separately, an alpaca farm. If you are finding this video interesting so far, drop a thumbs up and let us know in the comments which of these entries surprised you most. The buried wall in Texas, the 1,548 carving boulder in North Carolina, or something else entirely. We read every comment. And the entries coming up are where this list gets significantly harder to explain. Number 8. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel. The high-altitude calendar nobody built. You access it by hiking 1.5 miles along a ridge after the road gates close, at 9,640 feet in Wyoming's Bighorn National Forest, 12 miles south of the Montana border. If you visit in winter, you cannot reach it at all. The snow covers it completely. What the snow reveals when it melts is a stone wheel 82 feet in diameter, with a central cairn 12 feet across, from which 28 stone spokes radiate outward to a peripheral circle, surrounded by 6 smaller cairns at the rim. One of those cairns is large enough to hold a seated human. Age estimates range from a few hundred to more than 3,000 years. The only reliable scientific date is from a single wood sample from the western cairn. Astronomer John Eddy discovered in the 1970s that specific cairns align with the summer solstice sunrise and with the rising of the stars Aldebaran, Rigel, and Fomalhaut, a precise celestial calendar built into the landscape. At least 10 Native American tribes, including the Arapaho, Blackfeet, Cheyenne, Crow, Lakota Sioux, and Shoshone, use the site for ceremony and prayer. The Arapaho call it Hiei Nunoti. No single tribe claims to have built it, and oral traditions from multiple nations describe the wheel as ancient even before their own histories began. You can visit in summer. The Forest Service manages access. The cairn at the rim that once held a watcher is still sized for exactly one person. Number 7. The Miami Circle. The 2,000-year-old hole that stopped a skyscraper. In 1998, a developer named Michael Bowman had already demolished the 1950s apartment building on a piece of Brickell waterfront property in downtown Miami. He was preparing to build luxury condominiums. City heritage law required a brief archaeological survey first. County archaeologist John Risasak found something in the limestone. A circle. 24 large rectangular holes cut into the bedrock in a perfect 38-foot ring, surrounded by hundreds of smaller holes. The cardinal directions intentionally marked, with a carving of a human eye at the eastern terminus. Burnt wood in the holes dated to approximately 0300 C. Artifacts recovered included shell tools, stone axe heads, human teeth, pottery, and a 5-foot shark. It is the only known prehistoric permanent structure carved into bedrock in the eastern United States. The state of Florida spent $26.7 million to buy the property. A prominent University of Florida archaeologist initially declared it a modern septic tank drainage system, nearly derailing preservation. He was later shown to be wrong. When state officials were raising funds, some developers proposed cutting the entire 38-foot section of bedrock out and moving it. The stonemason hired for the job refused after determining the soft limestone could not survive the process intact. The circle is now covered with sod and flagstones to protect it, in a small waterfront park. 2,000-year-old human teeth sit in a museum across the street. Glass towers rise on all sides. Miami went ahead and built around it. Number 6. Coral Castle. The Latvian Heartbreak Monument. His name was Edward Leeds Kalman. He was born in Latvia in 1887, stood approximately 5 feet tall, weighed around 100 pounds, had received a 4th-grade education, suffered from tuberculosis, and in 1923 began building a castle in South Florida out of limestone blocks, some weighing several tons, working alone, at night, with no electric equipment and no mortar. Over 28 years, he moved and carved over 1,100 short tons, nearly 2.2 million pounds, of oolite limestone into walls, furniture, sculptures, a Polaris telescope, a sundial, a heart-shaped table, 25 stone rocking chairs, and an 8-foot-tall revolving gate weighing 9 tons, balanced so precisely on its axis that a child could push it open with one finger. He did it for Agnes Scuffs, who had canceled their wedding the day before it was to take place in Latvia. He dedicated the structure to the girl who had left him. He built lookout walls to ensure no one could watch him work. In 1936, when development encroached on his original property in Florida City, he hired a truck and a driver at $1 per trip and moved the entire castle 10 miles north to Homestead. How he loaded or unloaded the stones alone was not seen. 2 teenagers who once observed him at night later told police they saw rocks moving in mid-air like hydrogen balloons. No other witnesses exist. Modern engineers have identified pulleys, levers, tripods, and truck bearings as the likely tools. The mechanics, while impressive, are not supernatural. What stays with people is something else. The scale of sustained effort by a single person, failing in health, on a diet of crackers and sardines, over nearly 3 decades, for someone who never came back. When Category 5 Hurricane Andrew struck Homestead in 1992, one of the most destructive storms in American history, the castle did not move. Coral Castle is open daily. Adult admission is $18. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. Billy Idol wrote a song about it. The gate still turns with a finger. Number 5. Casa Grande Ruins. The 4-story desert tower nobody understands. Off Highway 87 north of Coolidge, Arizona, the land is flat, and the vegetation is sparse saguaro and mesquite. And then, without any real warning, a 4-story adobe structure appears on the horizon, wearing a metal roof on 4 steel pillars that was installed by the federal government in 1932 to keep the rain off. The Hohokam people built it around 1350 CE from caliche adobe, a natural desert concrete of sand, clay, and calcium carbonate, requiring over 3,000 tons of material and hundreds of timber beams brought from distant mountain ranges. The structure is approximately 60 feet long. Its 4 walls face the cardinal directions. Some of its windows align with solar and lunar positions at specific times of year. Its actual purpose is unknown. It may have been an astronomical observatory. It may have been a gourd tower, a grain silo, a ceremonial building, an administrative center. No written record exists. The builders left no writing at all. The Hohokam engineered over 100 miles of irrigation canals in the Gila River Valley, the most extensive prehistoric irrigation system in the Americas, all without metal tools. They farmed the Sonoran Desert for over 1,000 years. Around 1450 C, roughly 50 years before Columbus reached the Caribbean, they were gone. Climate change, drought, social collapse, and cultural transformation have all been proposed. None has been confirmed. President Benjamin Harrison designated Casa Grande the first prehistoric archaeological reserve in the United States in 1892. It is now a National Park Service monument, receiving between 60,000 and 80,000 visitors annually. The first story of the building is packed solid with earth. The builders deliberately filled it in to support the weight of the floors above. Modern engineers consider the technique remarkably sophisticated for a culture with no written engineering tradition. What they built is still standing. What they intended remains open. Number 4. Watson Break. Older than the pyramids, and you have never heard of it. In the early 1980s, a local resident named Rika Bamberg Jones noticed something unusual in a cleared field in Wichita Parish, Louisiana, after loggers had come through. There were bumps in the ground. She contacted state archaeologist Joe Saunders. In 1997, the journal Science published what the investigation found: 11 earthen mounds connected by ridges, forming an oval approximately 900 feet across. The largest mound is 25 feet tall. Radiocarbon dating placed the beginning of construction at approximately 3500 BC, 5,400 years ago, older than the Egyptian pyramids by roughly 1,000 years, older than Stonehenge by roughly the same. The oldest known earthwork complex in North America. Here is what overturned a century of archaeological assumption. Watson Break was built by hunter-gatherers. No agriculture, no pottery tradition, no evidence of permanent occupation, no human remains, no ceremonial objects, no burial goods. The people who built it spent summers fishing and winters hunting, and apparently gathered on this Louisiana floodplain seasonally for roughly 600 years, generation by generation, and kept adding to the mounds, for reasons that remain completely opaque. In a 2025 paper, archaeologist T.R. Kidder of Washington University described their probable motivation as spiritual harmony in a volatile world. That is the most specific answer the evidence supports. The site is not open to the public. It sits on private land in northern Louisiana, partially protected by the state, largely invisible from any road. The mounds look like natural hills in the forest until you understand their arrangement. Rika Bamberg Jones knew, looking at those shapes in a cleared field, that something was there. It took science another 16 years to confirm what she had seen. Number 3. Poverty Point. The city that shouldn't exist. In northeastern Louisiana, off Interstate 20 near the Mississippi state line, there is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that sits in the same tier as Pompeii, Stonehenge, and the Great Wall of China. It received that designation in 2014. You may not have heard of it. Poverty Point was built between approximately 1700 and 1100 BCE. 3. 700 years ago. The site contains 5 mounds and 6 concentric C-shaped earthen ridges with an outer diameter of 3/4 of a mile. The largest mound, called the Bird Mound, is 72 feet tall, 710 feet long, and 660 feet wide. Scientists estimate that 53 million cubic feet of soil were moved during construction, the equivalent of 140,000 dump truckloads, all carried by hand in baskets. No wheels, no horses, no metal tools. The site was built by hunter-fisher-gatherers with no agriculture and no domesticated animals. That is what makes it genuinely disorienting. Everything archaeologists thought they knew about the prerequisites for monumental construction, settled farming, hierarchical leadership, surplus food, organized labor under command, does not apply here. Poverty Point was built by people who should not, by any prior understanding of the archaeological record, have been capable of building it. The scale of the earthworks was not surpassed for at least 2,000 years, and only then by societies supported by farming economies. The ridges of Poverty Point were present in the landscape for over 3,000 years. Archaeologists visited the site for decades. Europeans farmed it for a century. Nobody understood what the ridges were until 1953, when a researcher re-examined a 20-year-old aerial photograph and realized that the pattern visible from the air was not natural topography. It was a planned city. A 2025 study from Washington University proposed that Poverty Point was not a permanent settlement at all, but a massive seasonal gathering place for egalitarian communities who came from across the southeast to trade, celebrate, and perform rituals, building the earthworks generation by generation as spiritual offerings to a world prone to floods. If that theory holds, a leaderless, nomadic people built one of the most impressive earthwork complexes in human history, on purpose. For reasons that had nothing to do with power. The site is open to the public 9 to 5 daily for $6. Tram tours run at regular intervals. The mounds are walkable. Number 2. The Great Serpent Mound. The world's largest snake, written in earth. On a high wooded plateau in Adams County, Ohio, above a creek and atop an ancient meteor impact crater, whose surface features have been almost entirely erased by erosion, there is a snake. Made of earth. 1,348 feet long. Its tail coils in 7 loops. Its head holds an oval shape that may be an egg, an eye, the sun, or something no living person knows how to name. It is the largest serpent effigy in the world. The mound is 19 to 25 feet wide and rises roughly 3 to 5 feet from the surrounding landscape. There are no burials inside it, no artifacts, nothing that explains what it was for. The head aligns with the summer solstice sunset. The coiled tail aligns with the winter solstice sunrise. The 3 curves of the body may align with equinoxes. The Ohio History Connection notes that the sight lines are too short and vague to confirm the alignments definitively. The astronomical connections could be intentional or incidental. Nobody knows. The mound has 2 competing construction dates, each supported by serious radiocarbon evidence. Approximately 300 BC, attributed to the Adena culture, and approximately 1070 C, attributed to the Fort Ancient culture. Both results have been challenged. Part of the problem is that the mound has been repaired and maintained across centuries, mixing materials from different eras throughout its structure. In 1886, Harvard archaeologist Frederick Ward Putnam raised money from a group of Boston women to buy the land before plowing destroyed it. That early preservation effort became a model for American archaeological practice. In 2012, a group calling themselves Light Warriors ran across the mound and buried quartz crystals in it to reactivate it. The Serpent sits directly on an ancient meteor impact crater. The geological feature is so old, it can no longer be seen. The people who built the mound on this exact spot may not have known why the ground was different here. Or they may have chosen this spot precisely because they knew. You can climb the 1908 observation tower at the site. From there, you can see the full shape of the snake as it was intended to be seen. From the ground, you can only see a portion of it at once. That is a strange thing about the Serpent Mound that rarely gets mentioned. Whoever built it for a view they could not themselves have had. Number 1. Cahokia Mounds. America's forgotten first city. You come off Interstate 55 near Collinsville, Illinois, in the flat agricultural land east of St. Louis, and the highway itself passes through what used to be a city. The mounds appear without warning from the surrounding cornfields, low at first, then gaining mass, then suddenly, to your left, one that does not stop. It rises 100 feet. It covers 17 acres at its base. It has 4 terraces. At the top, if you climb it, you can see the Arch of St. Louis on the western horizon across the Mississippi River, and in every other direction. The flat American bottom stretching away. The highway noise rises from below. There is nothing around you that is taller. You are standing on the largest pre-Columbian earthen structure in the Americas north of Mexico, and most people driving past it on the interstate do not know its name. The mound is called Monk's Mound, named for a group of Trappist monks who lived nearby in the 1800s. long after everything else was over. At its top once stood a building the size of a basketball court, almost certainly a temple or the residence of whoever led this place. The building is gone. The mound remains. At its peak, around 1100 C, the city of Cahokia covered approximately 6 square miles and included at least 120 earthen mounds. Its population was somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 people, by some estimates, larger than the city of London at the same time. Archaeologists call it the primary center of the Mississippian culture, the most complex pre-Columbian civilization north of Mexico. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1982. The city had no writing system. Its original name is unknown. Cahokia is the name of an unrelated tribe that was living in the area when French explorers arrived in the 17th century. The name of the city that was here before, the name its residents gave it, is gone. What the city did have: a grid of plazas, residential neighborhoods, a ball court, agricultural fields, trade networks reaching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast, and a solar calendar. 5 circles of large cedar posts, each aligned with the solstice sunrise, discovered accidentally during 1960s salvage excavations when a planned highway interchange cut through the site. Archaeologists call it Woodhenge. In Mound 72, beneath a ceremonial deposit of 20,000 shell beads, they found the remains of approximately 250 people, most of them young women, who appeared to have been ritually sacrificed. 4 additional skeletons buried nearby had their heads and hands removed before burial. Around 1350, 2 centuries before any European set foot in this part of the world, the city's population had largely dispersed. The reasons remain debated: drought, deforestation, flooding, resource exhaustion, political collapse. Recent research has shown the site was not entirely abandoned, but was later re-inhabited by tribes of the Illinois Confederacy, and maintained a population until European-born disease and climate change in the 17th century finished what the earlier crisis had started. The city did not simply vanish. It was erased over time, unevenly, by forces it could not have anticipated. Archaeologists call what happened around 1050 see the Cahokia Big Bang. Within roughly a generation, a modest collection of villages was transformed into a planned urban center. Who initiated that transformation, and why it happened when it did, is not known. There was no writing. There is no record. The most haunting part of this story is not what happened to the city. It is what happened to its reputation afterward. Thomas Jefferson himself examined the earthen mounds of the Mississippi Valley and declared them to be of Native American origin. For generations after him, European and American writers refused to accept that conclusion. The lost civilization narrative, the insistence that the mounds must have been built by Phoenicians or Vikings, or a vanished race from somewhere else, persisted well into the 20th century. It was, in significant part, a product of the refusal to believe that indigenous North Americans were capable of building something this large, this planned, this sophisticated. Monk's Mound, bigger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza, was built one basket of earth at a time, by people with stone hoes and no draft animals. It took generations. The city it anchored was real, and it was here, and almost nobody driving past it knows what they are looking at. The United States is very old, and most of that age is not taught in schools, and does not appear on highway signs. These 17 structures are what that age looks like when it survives long enough to be noticed. My personal favorite on this list is Watson Brick, not because it is the most dramatic, but because a woman looked at bumps in a field and knew, and the rest of us took 16 years to catch up. Which of these entries surprised you most? And which place do you think deserves to be on a list like this that we missed? Let us know in the comments. If you want more videos like this, subscribe. We are not running out of material.